So this is the time when we're just going to give a little bit of airtime to each of the committees. Some of you are very active in one particular committee, and you don't get a chance to really know what's going on the other side. So we're going to find other ways to be able to share that information ongoing, except besides just wait until the next plenary. But until then, we're going to start, and I'm not sure if we have anybody for financial services on the phone or not. I don't think we have anybody in the room that's going to give an update. Is anybody giving an update in the room?
Any content I could add? Well, there is no content to add right now.
Right.
We're working on it.
How about this? So I'm going to actually put Angela Ray on the spot. And while, one of the updates we've had for a while with the Financial Services Committee is just really trying to figure out what the role is and how to get individuals engaged. But Angela, would you mind coming up for a couple of minutes and just talking about the Birds of a Feather session? Because, that was kind of the purpose of that Birds of a Feather yesterday, was really to try to start thinking about some other ideas. And so I know this is completely impromptu, but you're very good on your feet. And I really think that she took a ton of notes about the Birds of a Feather session. But I don't think that you have to really focus on the notes, but maybe even talk about the spirit and the focus of why there was the need for a Birds of a Feather session. This was not put together by the chair. And so it was just, an impromptu thing. The Financial Services Chair was in the meeting, but Birds of a Feather sessions are just conversational, informal meetings. So maybe we can just have that first, and then after that we'll go to healthcare.
Okay, so a slight anecdote for those of you who I haven't told. I'm originally from Central Florida, and my father was stationed at Tampa Bay, so at MacDill Air Force Base. So I have a story for you of why Tampa is a unique place to have an identity conference, and that's because you may have seen the pirate ship outside. So the legend for this area is that Jose Gaspar, a Spanish pirate, and the English would hide in the estuary that's out here. So it's somewhat unique. Of course, that was 500 years ago, but what the hell. So financial services. Financial services is all but a non-existing committee at this point. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we're capturing the vertical market that we want to capture. The concern has been, the committee's been too focused on the traditional definition of financial service providers. Banks, merchant services, insurance companies, and part of my goal is to be able to expand it a little bit. So it's very limited with the parties that we're targeting. What we're trying to do is expand who the parties are and engage them as somewhat the ignition to bring demand to the table so that we can get more of the e-commerce activity going. So it's limited now. We're trying to take a new focus at what the charter is. If you go back and look at the charter, it is very tightly defined on who the focus is. And I only just read it a couple of days ago. Some of the deliverables, I can tell you right now, they're not going to happen. One of the deliverables is to inventory the regulation within the financial services environment. How big is that? That's monumental. That's never going to happen. And by the time you finish it, it's already changed. So there's just a lot on the table. At this point, we're trying to just identify who's going to be interested, what's going to bring them to the table. Right now, the general perspective, my general perspective is that a lot of the financial service companies already have their own trust frameworks, and why do they need the IDESG? And we're looking for that. Is there a carrot or is there a stick? And which is going to get them to really come to the table and have a conversation. Two of our pilots they volunteered about an hour ago to give presentations to the committee, so we can hope to open some more eyes and ears as to what might be possible. That's completely impromptu. I know that wasn't organized. So, but those are the thoughts off the top of my head. Thank you.
So Bob Pinheiro has been doing a great job trying to figure out how to help, keep this going. But there were some really good discussions, though, about, maybe focusing out on traditional financial services organizations and looking at credit unions, looking at money services. I mean, financial services has a much broader meaning, and sometimes we get very narrow in our thinking. So I thought it was a really good birds of a feather session. Next up is our healthcare committee, and Dr. Tom is going to come up here and give us an update.
Again, no slide deck, impromptu, but we have two very active members of our committee who are sitting in the audience, and I'm going to ask them to fill in any big issues I forgot. We had three breakout meetings today, so we're pretty busy in healthcare. We had pretty good attendance online from our remote members. And we had one informal, impromptu meeting yesterday morning with the Security Committee to talk about some of our requests for modifications of the security functional model. So the first meeting this morning was joint meeting with Privacy Committee. Stuart Shapiro's here, and Jennifer Behrens from their committee, who's our liaison, did a great job of organizing the discussion. And we basically talked about our two main deliverables, mainly the privacy considerations and a record locator service, which is, most people know as a health information exchange, which are run by states around the country, and some more or less successful, but still in their infancy. And how do you protect patient privacy when data is aggregated in the absence of patients having real control? Over what data is aggregated, exactly what? Because we recognize everybody's right to segment healthcare data and say what can be shared and what cannot. And so the advent of not only these state, I say state-run, but state-affiliated health information exchanges, not health insurance exchanges, health information exchanges, poses a real problem. And I think this morning we basically heard that we have some more work to do to work with the Privacy Coordination Committee, look at their latest version of the privacy evaluation module, and recognize, as we have, that there are going to be trade-offs between the safety of the patient and exposing information when it's needed, where it's needed, versus the privacy of the patient. So that's a very quick summary of that joint session with privacy, and I'll go on to we immediately separated, and privacy met by themselves, and healthcare met separately. So the topic of our healthcare breakout was pretty much consumed by the discussion that we had and the compromise that we tried to reach with the Security Committee on the functional model. Our claim was that there should be a mention of time stamping, and as we got into the discussion, we realized that that was out of bounds. The Security Committee did not want to mention that, at least in this version, but we felt very strongly and had a unanimous vote a week ago to fall on our swords if we didn't get some mention of that. And by that I mean, when it comes up to a vote in front of the IDESG, we would just abstain. We didn't want to object, because we realize the plenary owns this now, I guess. That's what I'm told, rather than just the Security Committee. But so when we had our breakout this morning, we heard that even with what I felt was the compromised language that I agreed to last night around midnight when Adam and I and a few others were exchanging information, the rest of the members didn't feel that our needs were met. And so we had an informal vote, and they said, let's see, we should fall on our sword. We shouldn't give in version 1. But nevertheless, my feeling is we want the IDESG to come to some product. It's been so long since we've produced anything that we can say is a beginning of what the IDESG is going to offer. So there was in this informal vote, there was sort of a 3-2. Yes, let's side with this compromise language, which mentions accountability but doesn't talk anything about timestamps or other cross-functional characteristics like logging and the importance of audits as being part of the functional elements of a security model. So we had a sort of a pretty weak vote, 3-2, in favor of supporting the compromise language, but I got beaten up by my members. I don't have the bruises to show, but...
You are a doctor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He knows how to hide.
So that was a large part of our individual breakout this morning. And then we had our third breakout this afternoon, in which we got a great update. I guess a lot of you had already heard it from the healthcare pilot CSDI, Cross-Sector Digital Initiative with AMVA and Inova Health System in Northern Virginia. So I think some of you have already heard that. But we went into much greater detail, talked about some of their problems and some of the other issues that are going on because the technology, the environment, and so many things are changing so fast. So that's a quick summary of the 3 meetings we had today. And
Thank you.
anybody on the committee feel I left out any? Good job, Tom. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. Okay, so if you all don't believe that we have a transparent approach to things, that should have been behind closed doors, Dr. Tom, all of the other conversation. I'm just joking. But one thing that we didn't talk about was that the Healthcare Committee is really interesting how it works with a lot of the other organizations within the broader identity community. So they are very actively involved with HIMSS. They have HIMSS has a task force around identity, and they, if you have not looked at any of the blogs that HIMSS has put out, it's really refreshing to see how frequently they talk about the importance of working with the Healthcare Committee. And then earlier this week, Dr. Tom and others were part of the GIS and giving a presentation with ONC. So having, there are a lot of spots where all of our committees have some other reach outs that we can start to make. And so I think that was a great example of, even though it wasn't brought up, but great work. Next up is our International Coordination Committee, and I believe that Colin Wallace is going to be giving the presentation. Are you kidding? Thank you.
So, thank you, Kim. And could I ask the International Committee members just to raise their hands for a moment? Actually, stand up, could you please? Yeah, thank you, people. And so we've got 3. I think we've actually got 4. Andrew is here on as well. So yeah, I think so there's 5 of us all together. So Clayton Bonnell from USPS and I wrestled with who was going to do this, and I lost. So, so what you're actually seeing is most of Clayton's work delivered by me. Okay, right, where have we got clicker? Let's see how we go here. Right, just a quick reminder. Clayton wanted us to remind, me to remind us all about what we're about. And so really it was just, these were just random sentences off an email last night. And I just want you to sort of kind of quietly read that while I spend sort of 10 seconds really talking about it. And really that's what International does. We're not a sort of a kind of a critical path committee here. Our job is to kind of be your international eyes and ears, be that go out and seek and find new information for you, and also to promote and extend. And we've kind of done that. If I move on, that's not very good. All right, that's it. All right. Okay, so a brief look at what we've delivered. So we did, last year we did that global inventory. It was, in fact, actually, it was the first ever deliverable out of the IDESG. It did have some problems, but nonetheless, you know, first time you do anything, you have some issues. So, but we got it out the door, and the second thing we did was the liaison with EMA. So there's a classic case where we sort of kind of were doing some outreach. So that third one was really trying to second guess. We realised that the Financial Services Committee was in trouble, and we were trying to find ways to stimulate the discussion. So that's why we did that National ID Initiatives study, and we presented that at the Semantic Plenary in Mountain View. And then, well, these last two are ones that we've talked about in the Birds of a Feather yesterday, and that's Herbert Lee Told's done a stunning job on that EIDAS regulation, and to a lesser extent on the data protection draft, because that's still a long way to go. But I challenge anyone to find a clearer, more concise, more understandable analysis. Oh, is it? Right.
Daft instead of draft.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
Picky.
This was done kind of rushed, right? Okay, and then the research was what's going on there? Yeah. And the Trustmark research I talked about yesterday as well. So that's courtesy of OAX UK. So, you know, we always try and, sort of claim some ownership to other people's work if we can. So there we go. So that's what we've done. What we think that we have taken away from this plenary, and we could be kind of. I made the comment yesterday when Neville was presenting the strategy that we need some international text in there, and everyone sort of kind of seemed to agree on that. The second thing actually came up in the Birds of a Feather, and that was Jeremy really trying to bring that together. I think, Jeremy, is that more or less what I think I heard you sort of kind of suggest would be a good thing?
I think so.
Okay. And the last one was sort of kind of came up in the framework development discussion yesterday afternoon when. I said, well, it's great that we're spending all this time and energy on the Trustmark, but maybe we should have two activities to our bow, because if we bet all the farm on the Trustmark and no one buys it, then at least we'll have already done a whole lot of coordination work with other people's Trustmarks even at that point. So let's make that a legitimate part of the IDESG's work. And I sort of kind of got, from the panel up here, I got sort of kind of agreement and nodding of heads. What I don't know is whether, did they so fully understand that I don't need to do anything, but I'm capable of, I'll do it if I'll add something if people want it. So that's really, that's pretty much up from us. And one of the good things actually out of this is having sort of cleared the air about we don't want to second guess what you guys want from us anymore. Just come and ask us. If you're going to do something, you're looking for some information, you've heard about something overseas, come and ask us. We'll go and find it for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin. And with Don Tebow as the chair of the International Coordination Committee and Colin as the vice chair, similar to healthcare, they've done a lot to get involved with a lot of the international activities that are happening in a lot of other countries and get that kind of shared feedback. I was in an event in London with them in May, and just seeing the amount of conversations that other people are having about what the U.S. is doing is pretty impressive, or trying to do, I should say. Trust Framework and Trustmark Committee. Nope, that's not right. The Privacy Committee is next. And that would be Stuart Shapiro.
Did you guys roll dice to determine the order for these? Just out of curiosity.
Just alphabetical.
Alphabetical?
I, then P comes to you.
We're already at P? How can that be?
There's nothing in between.
Just like my ears. Okay, as is my habit, I will eschew slides, because otherwise I'll just turn around and stare pointedly at the screen and you'll have to all look at my back for 5 minutes. So the Privacy Committee continues to keep busy. We have a more or less complete set of high-level privacy requirements that we've developed, and we're in the process of refining those. At the same time, we've started working on a more granular breakdown of those in the form of sub-requirements. As we work to refine the high-level requirements, we are having some interesting philosophical discussions. Today's featured the question, what is a transaction? And I suspect by the time we're all done, we'll be able to write a book on the Zen of transactions. In any case, it's our intention to liaise and coordinate with the other committees that are responsible for developing framework requirements, since it occurred to us that it would probably be a good thing if everybody had the same understanding of what constitutes a transaction, rather than waiting until everything came together to discover that the requirements were premised on multiple incompatible definitions of transactions, and so we'll be pursuing that. We have done privacy evaluations on a couple of work products. One was the functional model, and we issued our first ever official privacy review report based on that evaluation. We also completed a draft review report on the use cases, and that was given to the Standards Committee to chew over, and they are chewing it. We'll see to what extent they spit it out or throw up or whatever. With regard to privacy reviews, I do want to remind everybody of something that I mentioned at the last plenary, and that is we've actually set up a special email address, privacy leadership at idecosystem.org. Privacy leadership is one word. And I think what I'll do is I'll actually try and get that onto our committee webpage. We would like people to use that address when they submit work products for evaluation. That address distributes to all of the Privacy Committee officers and all of the subcommittee and working group chairs. The idea being that, number one, it's less work for the submitting committee because they only have to remember one email address. They don't have to go looking up the email addresses for the officers and whatever. And it also helps ensure that a submission does not pass us by distributing it to the officers and the chairs. It maximizes the odds that somebody will actually see it and recognize it as a submission for review and take the necessary follow-on actions. You may be asking, well, why can't we then just post it to the Privacy Committee list? And the answer to that is because you have to actually be a subscriber to the Privacy Committee list in order to post to it. And so therefore we did create this distribution list that you don't have to be a subscriber to specifically for this purpose. And so I do want to encourage people to actually use it for that intended purpose. Once again, it's privacy leadership at idecosystem.org. I would also, since I'm on the topic of that particular distribution list, let me also mention something that came out of some discussions that the Privacy Committee has had at this plenary regarding privacy reviews and evaluations. And that is that we would like to very much encourage committees that are of a mind to feel free to submit sneak previews, if you will, of work products. If there is a draft, and I should say, some of the committees, have done this to the entire plenary, so they sent out a broadcast, a general call for informal review and comments, and Privacy has responded to those as we receive them. But if for whatever reason you don't want to issue a general call for informal review and feedback, I want to emphasize that you are more than welcome, and by you I mean the other committees, you are more than welcome to submit a draft work product to us with a request for an informal privacy committee review and accompany feedback, and you can feel free to use that same distribution list, that same email address, to submit those kinds of requests as well. And we certainly encourage you to do so if you feel that would be useful. We certainly feel it would be useful from our perspective because that would give us a chance to take a look at a work product, a draft work product, before it actually comes in the door for formal review, and would provide an opportunity to identify issues, get them addressed early on. It would also help just with our general situational awareness. If a work product comes in the door and we've seen an earlier draft, we're already somewhat familiar with it, it helps the review go that much more quickly, whereas if it's the first time we're laying eyes on it, then that creates additional friction, if you will, in terms of actually conducting the review. Finally, I want to touch on the PEM, which is, of course, is the privacy evaluation methodology that we use in performing our privacy reviews, because we anticipate the PEM is going to undergo some significant changes. It's said that no plan survives the first attempt to implement it. And that, I think, is indeed the case with the PEM. We have now had experience trying to use it to evaluate work products. We have also heard about experience that the pilots have had trying to use it, although it was never designed originally with the idea in mind that the pilots would be taking it, or that anybody outside the IDESG would be taking it and trying to apply it. But nevertheless, that's also been useful grist for the mill as well. And so, as a result of all that, we've identified a number of significant issues with the PEM as it's currently constituted that we're going to go about trying to do something about. In case you're curious, I'm not going to delve into this in any detail. I'll just reel off some of the issues that we've encountered. The fact that with some IDSG work products, there's no fixed point of reference to apply the information life cycle to. If you're doing collection, there's the expectation or the assumption that there is some fixed point of reference, be it a system, a process, or something. It's collecting information from some entity and taking it in to this point of reference. And with some IDSG work products, there really isn't a clear point of reference. And if there is no clear point of reference, then relative to those information life cycle actions, then that creates complications. There is also sometimes an absence of context. The PEM is structured on the assumption that there is going to be context in terms of specific data flows and other characteristics, and our experience has been that context isn't always available. We've also discovered the difference, we've discovered this the hard way, the difference between an individual analyst trying to apply an assessment methodology, which is what the PEM is, and trying to apply that methodology in a committee setting. What is reasonably efficacious for an individual analyst is not necessarily as efficacious in a committee setting. And so we need to do some things to try and deal with that as well. And finally, what we've realized is that the workflows which we have spelled out for ourselves in the PEM are overly specific, and as a result, they are actually constraining us in unexpected ways. And so there is an intention to generalize those workflows a bit, to raise them up one or two levels so that they are not quite so constraining, and that they allow the Privacy Committee sufficient flexibility to deal with the exigencies of the evaluation of any given work product without having to have a discussion about, well, is this or is this not in conformance with our established workflows, and are we going to have to go back and modify our workflows, and so on. And so that, in a nutshell, is what privacy has been up to.
Thank you, Stuart. And I think that's a really good example, though, of we approved a work product, the Privacy Evaluation Model, the PIM, and then we see that after in use of it, there might be ways to make enhancements to it. And so there may be a 2.0 or something. But we had something that went out. We're never going to have a perfect work product till we know how to use it and let it go through the processes. So just kind of keep that in mind as we think about the work efforts that we do. Next up is the Security Committee. And I believe Adam Matlin, the chair, is on the phone. Is that correct, Adam? If not, we have Sita Rama in the room. Okay, so let's go with Sita Rama. Thanks for your flexibility.
In contrast to a lot of other committees, we do have a prepared presentation, which means that I'm going to stick to it, no impromptu. A couple of other thoughts apart from what's already in the slides, but we will cover the slides first, and then maybe I didn't realize that this was supposed to be also a recap of the events that took place in the plenary. So that's what I will do at the end of these slides. So what we had as goals, at least coming into the plenary, is like, we want to complete the adoption of functional model. Actually, it's the completion of the functional model itself. So we have a 1.0 version of the functional model, and we have a vote that's coming up tomorrow. And then the next activity, activity that we had was to understand the strategic plan that has been laid out on the first day of the plenary, and analyze how it actually impacts the work items that the Security Committee itself has drafted before the plenary. The third major item that we focused on during the plenary was the requirements as to, how do we go about drafting the security requirements. We already had a lot of good activity that has been started before we came to the plenary, but as part of the strategic plan and the direction that we got, or at least we heard from the strategic plan, was that there is a short-term set of requirements and there is a long-term set of requirements that we need to deliver. So that kind of impacts how we approach the requirements exercise, and there has been a lot of discussion around that. So in terms of progress, the Healthcare Committee has already commented on this. we had a very good discussion with the healthcare committee on one aspect of timestamp. It started with the notion of timestamps, but we quickly realized that it's not actually the timestamps that's the cornerstone of the debate. It's actually the accountability, the notion of accountability. And I think that's a very good realization after we came into the plenary, had face-to-face discussions. So what we're going to do, and this is what has been communicated to the healthcare committee also, is that we are going to have a motion to add content, to add an appendix to the functional model that essentially recognizes that there are some open items which have been brought to the security committee and which are now going to be explicitly recognized, explicitly identified within this version of the functional model document itself. So we also, as part of the committee breakouts, we had extensive discussions on the strategic plan that has been outlined, and then how it impacts the requirements itself, how we craft the requirements. As I was saying before, the big takeaway that we have is that I think we realized that there is a level of, there is a notion of high-level requirements that we need to focus on. And that's what we will be delivering in the short term. It's not clear what exactly constitutes as short term, but just using the term short term, I think we will be focusing on high-level requirements. So the good thing is we have, as a committee, as all the members of the committee of the security, we have kind of agreed upon an approach that we are going to use to create these requirements, high-level requirements. That's a good thing. I think this is just a recap, right? We made, so functional model is up for vote tomorrow. Security requirements, we are making very good progress. And as I just said, there is a plan to address the short-term needs of like high-level requirements that we are going to use that plan to meet the short-term goals of high-level requirements. There is another item that the security committee has been working on, which is the interaction model. This is something that I'm going to present tomorrow, talk about in more detail tomorrow, but at a high level, what we have realized is that there are a lot of discussions and a lot of requirements which are not really put in a context. And to be able to provide a tool which we can use to put such discussions and such requirements in context, we need to actually document the interactions that take place within the ecosystem. And that's what we started doing. We'll have more details on it tomorrow when I present on it at like 9:30. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And next is our Standards Coordination Committee, and the chair is Kathy Tilton.
So we've spent the majority of our time this week working on interoperability requirements of the derived requirements, and then also looking at our work plan, and particularly the priorities for 2014. So as we were looking at those priorities, we were trying to keep in the front of our minds the impact on the goals for this year for the initial identity ecosystem framework and the Trustmark program, as well as support for the strategic plan. So what we have tentatively, this was hasn't gone back to the full committee yet. We were, but here's what we have. We want to get this standards adoption policy version 1.0 out immediately, as quick as possible. Because we realize that in order for anybody to begin adopting standards, that needs to be in place. We have a stretch goal to get version 2.0 out by the end of the year, which would incorporate a number of deferred items that we put aside in order to get the version 1.0 out more expeditiously. The second thing is IDESG adoption. This would be a goal. IDESG adoption of at least 5 standards by the end of the year. And those standards being adopted would mean that they would be part of the identity ecosystem framework and the IDESG standards registry. And so with this in mind, we wanted to issue a challenge to the other committees, because as you're doing your work products in support of the IDEF and Trustmark programs yourselves, you're likely to come up with some low-hanging fruit in terms of standards that you may want to incorporate into the framework. And so the challenge that we'd like to issue is for you to bring those forward into the adoption process. The third is interoperability requirements. Today was the first day we've actually concentrated on those. The interoperability requirements were allocated to the Standards Committee, but we've had been pretty much heads down on the SAP, and so we have not had an opportunity to begin our analysis of those. So we really just started today. Our goal would be to try to identify a requirement set for submission to the framework, but it's not going to be the full set. We're going to only be able to concentrate on the high priority items for that again, that would be needed for this initial implementation. Next, we have the KBA performance metrics projects. We want to get a resolution on that. We need to redesign our wiki so that it's more useful for ourselves and others. The IDES use cases version 1.x, we'd like to get that approved by the plenary by the end of the year, but I need to caveat that in that we have some meetings coming up next week where we're going to be revisiting and looking at a way forward on those, so that could change. We want to increase the content and visibility of the standards inventory and put into place an SDO outreach plan. So we were asked to focus in our report of things we needed from the plenary, from the Management Council, and from the staff and secretariat. And so I have my wish list here in front of me. And so asks from the plenary. First is I'd like to just make a recruiting call. We could use more participation in the Standards Committee, particularly those of you that have any experience whatsoever in the standards world. We could use your help in our work. So the second one is the one I already mentioned, the adoption challenge to the committees, the standards adoption challenge. And the third is just once again mentioning that if you have any identity related standards that are not currently reflected in the standards inventory, we would like to have you enter those. For the Management Council, 2 things. We'd like to clarify the SDO liaison process with you. And secondly, and this is my broken record thing, but it's not resolved yet, so I'll say it again, and that is we really could use a graphical, detailed work product approval process. In terms of staff support, we could use some support with the wiki project that I mentioned, with our SDO outreach plan, and also with some project management in terms of helping us make our meetings and organization more efficient. And in terms of subject matter expert support, and this is possible, we haven't decided exactly what our needs are in these areas, but we can see where we may need some help in our interoperability requirements analysis, a longer term effort. The use cases, particularly change control related to the use cases. And then in terms of the standards adoption, the requirements traceability back related to the standards adoption. And that's it. Thank you.
Kathy, your wish is my command. We will be giving you a visual of the workflow to everybody as we talk about the approval for the functional model number 1. And then we'll go into more detail after the plenary. The plenary ends at noon. and then we will have all of the chairs kind of reconvene, and we're going to kind of go through some of the requirements that have come up as a result of these meetings, and we're going to go through that workflow a second time. So that is one that Kathy's been very vocal about needing, and I think it's a really good point. And we get to leverage some of the work that David Timoshak put together for us to start out with. And we know that there are also needs to improve the workflow, so more to come on that. Next is our Trust Framework and Trustmark Committee. And we will have Jack Seuss come up. Jack, you can't look confused.
He told me, he said that we weren't, he told you that we weren't going to present anything. That's why I was looking confused.
He was saying that there was no update, but that doesn't mean we can't see your face.
Oh, okay. All right. So I can say this now. So I will be brief. The one update, so we did two things here. One, we participated with the security and standards discussion on Thursday. Andrew also participated with the privacy discussion. And then today we were in the standards meeting. I think what we got was some good feedback on the IDEF plan that we had presented as the panel. And so that was very helpful, what we've gotten so far. I think the other piece that came out of today, we had a meeting of TIFTM at 2 o'clock. And one of the things that we started walking through was trying to come up with some different use cases and say, all right, how would this use case apply in the IDEF plan? And so part of what I think we want to take a look at is some of the representative use cases that may be in the use case portfolio, but we've also begun talking with some of the stakeholder communities, such as healthcare, where we could sit down and say, all right, let's pick a scenario, walk through how the plan might work, what would not work, or try to identify where there might be gaps in what we were thinking. So that's really, I think, the next steps that are starting to come out of the plan activity. We're also proceeding on trying to talk about how we set up the infrastructure for moving groups into the IDEF. And so that's one of the interesting aspects that I think will be coming forward in the next month. Finally, the last thing that I would just mention is that I'm very much looking forward to the chair's discussion tomorrow. Because I think that one of the things that's starting to come out of the discussion we had at requirements today was when we walk through the slides that Mike has done, which map out towards the end how the requirements process works and committee roles. I think really digging deep into those slides and understanding, well, what does it mean for work that's going to be happening and who's doing what and who starts it, who then takes it on and finishes it, is really going to be informing. And it's also going to be informing as to, do we have, each of us, the right technical resources, as well as the level of commitment within our committees to be able to do all of that work product. And so that's sort of where we are, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last committee update is the User Experience Committee, and Jim Zock is going to give that update.
For those that have commented and asked the question, you're in Tampa, this, of course, is the original color for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so just in a little homage to that. Mary's on the phone, so if I screw this up, she'll tell me, no, dummy, that's not what we did. So as the slides come up, and where's the clicker for forward back? Here we go. For that eye chart, I just wanted to tell you that there is a, that's even an eye chart on my phone. That's fun. Just so you know, there is a charter mission statement. There is an active user experience committee. We're small but dynamic, as I hope you'll get from these slides. So that's there at your leisure. It's on the wiki page. We invite all of you to look at the wiki page, and as I come through the next few slides, you'll understand why. Okay.
So we're trying to work with it.
I guess they better do that before I keep hitting forward and back.
So could you do a tap dance for us as we wait?
You don't want that with these big feet, trust me. Okay, so anyway, it's there for you to see. Thank you very much for making it legible, even for me with my old eyes. There we go. So literally, they're the things that are our goals or our projects that we're working on or need to work on as we go forward. First is guidelines on usability for the committees, and that's to formulate guidelines for projects and formulate guidelines for other activities. And we're also doing some work on patterns and anti-patterns and investigate pattern design. I will come back to this again. We have a few of these that are in very draft form on the wiki. We invite you to look at them. We invite all comments, and we, in fact, invite comments on anything that we've got on the wiki because we need the help with them. There is a designated project for usability guidelines for trust marks. We're starting to look at that. And then there's one in there that we're still trying to figure out at this stage of the day where it came from, which is a usability impact assessment, and we don't know what that is at this point, but we're going to leave it there until we find out what the scope is of whoever decided that we needed to do this. So
actually, Jim,
go ahead.
Can I hop in?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I do have a bit more information about the impact assessment. What they're asking for, this is my understanding that the NPO would like from us, is that the impact assessment would be something that we would almost like think of it like a form or where when we hand the guidelines to someone who is potentially submitting a trust mark, that they go back and they try to work with those guidelines. When they're ready to submit, they would then give us an impact assessment of how those guidelines hit their trust mark. And then following on that would be, they followed these guidelines and they believe they've hit them, and then they missed these other guidelines because they don't believe they should, and here's why. So that's my understanding, but of course, we in the UXC need more information about really specifically what is wanted there because we don't know that much about it.
Thank you, Mary. You should be seeing the folks from the NPO that I asked that question to earlier today slinking in their seats right now about, we didn't do that. So we have plausible deniability from at least several people on the team, up through included the bearded one, Michael. So. So the progress on that.
Do you mind?
Go ahead, Michael.
So it was not in fact the NPO. Neville has owned up to it.
Okay.
And FACTS said that it would be some document folks could use to answer a set of predetermined questions when assessing their UX, etc. solution against IDESG principles. It would be like a privacy impact assessment, but for UX subject area.
Thanks. I'm glad you got to him before I could. I've been looking for him, knowing that he probably left. Thanks, Michael. And so now that we have the plausible deniability covered on that, and Mr. Pattinson, wherever you are, thank you. So on the first goal, what we're showing here is that we have published some guidelines. We have a database of practices and things in there, and I'm the first to tell you that a lot of people came back and said, "You want us to read through all that? Wait a minute. We need the condensed version." So we are working on that. There's an overarching principles or requirements kind of paper that was done several months ago. That draft will be resent out again for people to comment on and for the appropriate committees to say, we get it, we don't get it, please tell us what you mean here. On the second, the patterns and anti-patterns, as I said, we've got one that we're asking for folks to put some comments on now. And rewrites will be continually in the works on this, and so we'll distribute to the privacy committee, among others, to see if there are impacts early on, et cetera. Guidelines for trust marks, you've heard all you want to hear for that today. The things we have accomplished is, as we said, the practices and standards and some educational resources are very much on the wiki page. We invite you to look at those. We think they'd be helpful for you in your committee work now. We've got the applications we've talked about. We've shared those, and they'll come back out again. And the guidelines is the condensed version, if you will, that is in draft, and it's going out again, but it is also on the wiki if you care to look at it. I apologize for the formatting. I'm the guilty party there. And
Jim, I have one additional thing that I forgot to put on these slides.
You're the chair.
We also have one other accomplishment. We did a review of the standards or the use cases from standards, the 1.2 version of those, and we are hopeful that once the privacy review is digested, that they'll come back and take a look at our comments. So that was an accomplishment as well, and we did a pretty detailed review of those. So it just represents a certain amount of work that, you know, we have a smaller committee, and I definitely want to thank everyone for all of the pieces of work that we've accomplished. The last thing, actually, or are we done with this last slide, or do you want to say anything?
go ahead, you're doing fine, and I'll cover whatever you do.
Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to do was just to talk about wants and needs, much like Kathy. Of course, we'll bring those up tomorrow, but I wanted to mention again that I have this idea for potentially making a work calendar for work that is up and coming for IDESG committees so that we can be prepared to provide support and feedback. This is not a deadlines calendar. This is simply a place where we would get some advance notice. I think, you know, Stuart kind of indicated a similar need, a desire to know what's up and coming, so that, you know, we can line up the folks, because we don't have as much help as we really need. And that leads to point number 2, which is we could really use some design help for visual design to help communicate things we're trying to communicate out to IDESG and folks outside our internal community, and then some user experience and usability help. So we will be talking about those things tomorrow.
That covers it.
And I think that's it.
Thank you, Mary. I didn't do too badly. I only missed half of it.
No, it's great. Thank you, Jim.
So that concludes our committee reports. We're done for the day, actually, and then tomorrow we resume at 8:30. One thing that I want to focus on tomorrow morning is the distinction between the strategic plan and the framework development plan. I'm starting to see these things merge together in some people's thoughts and a lot of the comments on the committee. So that was really helpful for me to see. And one of the challenges when we were putting the agenda together, we had the strategic plan scheduled to only bring it up on Friday. And the comments were, it's a lot helpful if the plenary is able to see the strategic plan early on, and then we can see the framework plan. But what I think has happened now is that in everyone's mind, the two have kind of merged together. So I'll try to decouple them because they do work together, but the strategic plan is the broader one. And then, as the security committee said, we're going to focus a lot on the functional model and getting that approved. So we're going to take it through the approval process and open it up to the floor, those remotely and those in the room, around getting that work product approved. It will be our first official work product in the whole flow that's gone through the privacy evaluation and all the other steps. And so we're very excited to try to get that adopted. And I think that we are pretty much on schedule right now. So I really thank you for hanging in there, and I'll see you in the morning.